Welcome, this is another Khan Academy support video. Specifically, we're going to be taking a look at the fourth Khan Academy assignment this week, the one called Intercepts from an Equation. As we get started, a big thing that's helpful to recall is just the definitions of what a Y-intercept and an X-intercept are, so I'm going to make this whiteboard a little larger for a second. A Y-intercept, recall, there are lots of solutions to linear equations, and the Y-intercept represents the value for y when x is equal to 0. In other words, if we make x 0, what does y have to be in order to be a solution to that equation? The X-intercept asks the opposite. It says if we make y equal to 0, what x value would we need for a solution? Or it's the value for x when we make y equal to 0. The first linear equation, instead of giving us graphs, now they just give us an equation, and the first linear equation we're provided with says negative 5x plus 9y is equal to negative 18. And they ask us to determine the intercepts of the line. The intercepts are again just solutions when one of the values is equal to 0. So here I have negative 5x plus 9y is equal to negative 18. This is similar to the second Khan Academy assignment in that you're going to be plugging in a value for the x or the y to find the other value in the solution. The first thing they ask us to find here is the x-intercept and the y-intercept. I'm going to go ahead and find my y-intercept first. Y-intercept, remember, is the value for y if we make x equal to 0. So I'm going to go ahead and make x equal to 0. The equation becomes negative 5 times 0 plus 9y equals negative 18. And the nice thing about finding intercepts is whenever we multiply by 0, those things wipe out entirely. So negative 5 times 0 gives us nothing and wipes out. So this equation, to find the y-intercept, the whole x term gets eliminated when I make x 0, so it really just becomes 9y equals negative 18. And if 9y equals negative 18, I could divide both sides of my equation by 9 to cancel out the multiplied by 9. A negative divided by a positive always produces a negative, and 18 divided by 9 gives us 2. So this equation, if we make our x value 0, if that whole x term is gone, for a solution the y value needs a negative 2. And to find the x-intercept, if you recall, the x-intercept is going to be the value for x when we make our y equal to 0. So I'm going to go back to this equation and this time make the y, or set the y equal to 0, so it becomes negative 5x plus 9 times 0 equals negative 18. And again, the nice thing about these intercepts is one term eliminates entirely when you do anything times 0. 9 times 0 is nothing, so this just becomes negative 5x equals negative 18. I don't know what number times 5 makes 18, so I'm going to go ahead and divide both sides of my equation by negative 5. That's that inverse operation. The opposite of multiplying by 5 is to divide by 5. So I divide both sides by negative 5 to cancel out that negative 5, and that tells me x is equal, a negative divided by a negative is a positive. 18 does not get divided by 5 evenly. So I'm allowed to leave my answer as a fraction. I would hope so. So I'm going to leave that answer as 18 divided by 5 instead of switching it over to 3.6. And we see Khan Academy still gives me credit even though I didn't switch the 18 over 5 to the decimal version, which would be 3.6. We're going to take a look at one more example here. So now, again, anytime we're finding or asked to find intercepts, if they just give you an equation, it's a little tougher than the graph, but all you need to do is replace the y or the x with 0 to find either intercept. If I want to find the y-intercept, I replace x with 0. If I want to find the x-intercept, I replace y with 0. So here the first thing they asked me to find is the y-intercept. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to replace a y-intercept. Says what is the y value when x is equal to 0. So I'm going to replace my x with 0 in this equation. 4 times 0 plus 5. And now this is an equation that only has y in it, and I need to solve for y. I'm going to simplify first. I'm going to simplify all the numbers on the right side of the equation because there's no variables over there. 0 plus 5 is 5. And 4 times 5 is 20. So y minus 6 needs to be equal to 20. Recapping, we replaced the x with 0. Then we did the math to simplify the right expression, or the right side of the equation. I'm going to go ahead and add 6 to both sides of my equation now, because that's what's going to cancel out the negative 6 over here. That's the inverse operation that helped me solve for y. So now that tells me y is equal to 26. So if we were to make y our y-intercept, if we were to set our x value equal to 0, the equation tells me y better give 26. To find the x-intercept, we'll just do the opposite, of course. We're going to go back to our original equation. And now we're going to replace the y with 0, and that's going to be how we're going to try to go find the x-intercept. So I get 0 minus 6, which is really just going to be negative 6, is equal to 4 times x plus 5. I'm going to go ahead and a couple ways to solve this equation. I'm going to choose to distribute the 4. I like to distribute when I see parentheses a lot of times. 4 times x gives me 4x. 4 times 5 gives me 20. So I have negative 6 is equal to 4x plus 20. Now that I have the x's on the right side of the equation, I want to isolate or get that x all by itself on the right side. The first thing I want to do is get rid of that plus 20. Subtracting 20 helped me accomplish that. That gets me 4x is equal negative 6 minus 20 is going to make negative 26 when I combine those two negative numbers. My last step is to divide both sides of the equation by 4, because that is how I cancel out the multiplied by 4. And I'm going to end up with a decimal answer here. 26 does not divide to a whole number if you do 26 divided by 4. Instead, I'm going to simplify it to negative 13 over 2. 26 over 4, they're both even numbers, so if I divide them each by 2, 26 divided by 2 is 13, 4 divided by 2 is 2. So I simplified this fraction when I noticed they were both even numbers. I simplified down to negative 13 over 2. The video is going a little lengthy at this point, so I'm not going to continue into the third and the fourth example. They're very similar. To find y-intercepts and x-intercepts, you need to find a y-intercept, plug in a 0 for x, then solve for y. And to find an x-intercept, you do the opposite. You plug in a 0 for y, and then you solve for x. Please feel free to use the Khan Academy support or the Get Help feature in addition to Sal Khan's videos. And as always, please feel free to email me if you're stuck on any assignments, and I'm happy to jump on Google Meet with you. Thank you for the good work. Keep it up.